This is a briefing, but there is a lot of information that I need to go over so that we all are coming from the same viewpoint as our understanding of what ARPA is. So I excuse up front the detail that I'm going to give you, a lot of numbers, but I think it's important. The American Rescue Plan Act, ARPA, which is the acronym that we're all using, 1.9 trillion, that's with the T. And I'm going to use T's and D's and M's to distinguish a lot of these numbers. Now, more specifically, what I'm going to talk about tonight is a portion of that 1.9 trillion of 350 billion, and it's called the Coronavirus State and Local Fiscal Recovery Funds. So that's going to be the focus of my conversation. The state of Idaho received 1.1 billion of that amount. Another 579 million is going to the cities and counties in Idaho. Kootenai County is receiving $32,184,700. So that's the high level, 60,000 feet. Now there's some in our community that thinks there's too many strings attached to this allotment. And I'm going to spend some time going through the strings in a moment, but in a nutshell, they don't believe the county should accept the funds and that we should send the money back. Now I'm going to give you some details that I'd like you to consider when that question is put to you. And again, this is all background so you have an idea of what we've been doing at the county. This is a timeline that we have followed at the county. I'm going to go through some of the details. You can find that on our website. On the 17th of May, the Board of County Commissioners made a resolution to accept the $32 million. We made the application for the funds. On the 15th of August, the first tranche, we're receiving the $32 million in two different tranches. The first one that we received was August, and then sometime after May of next year, we'll receive the second half. On November 4th, we transitioned the task force. We created a task force within Kootenai County to evaluate this process. The ARPA funds, the interim rule, the final rule, and we transitioned to an open meeting format so we could receive comment from not only those within the county, but the community itself. And we received a lot of comment. On the 10th of November, we adopted how we're going to evaluate all the requests, and we also signed a conflict of interest policy. As many of you may know, I sit on the hospital board, and I'm involved in other things. We have other elected officials on this task force, and it was important to me to make sure that everybody understood that there was going to be a disclosure of any conflicts, so that when we evaluate those requests for funds, everybody knows what conflicts exist. On the 6th of this month, January, the final rule the Treasury adopted, which was 435 pages. The summary, the executive summary itself is 43 pages. Again, I'm on the timeline, and this is to give you a flavor of what we've been doing. We are beginning to publish our working papers as a task force on our website, so you can find that on the Kootenai County website. Now going forward, these are our targets. By the end of February, we hope to complete the evaluations. Early in March, we hope to rank them, and then we're going to submit them sometime in mid-March to the Board of County Commissioners, who are the authoritative body to make the final decision. The task force, my role on it is just as an advisory standpoint. So that's the time frame and the timeline. Now, what we did is we published the receipt of this money at the county. We made a publication. I can't remember the date, but we have received a number of requests. Now, the Idaho Association of Counties, IAC, strongly recommended that we not put the county commissioners in charge of this process, nor the sheriff, and you can imagine why. So I drew the short stick and I got assigned to the task force, and I've been kind of the presiding officer. When we made the publication, these are some of the requests that we've received, and I can go into more detail if you have any questions. But the Board of County Commissioners asked for $37.5 million of the money that we were allocated. We only got allocated $32 million. The sheriff asked for $22 million. We have water and sewer districts at just under $24 million. Fairgrounds, just under $7 million. External organizations outside the county itself, $6,762,234. Our IT department wants $500,000. Our prosecutor wants $175,000. The coroner wants $6,000. So we received $32,000 and some change. We received $98,524,187 in requests, and they're still coming in. Okay, that's an overview. Now what I want to do is give you a little bit more detail as it relates to this question, should we send the money back? Kootenai County is receiving $32 million out of $1.9 trillion with a T. That represents 0.0000168. That's our allocation of just ARPA. Now, as you may know, ARPA is the 5th stimulus plan approved by Congress and the President. So there's another 3.7 trillion, that's with a T, that has been put into the economy as a stimulus. Now, also to combat the economic impacts of this pandemic, the balance sheet of the Federal Reserve is now at $8 trillion, that's with a T, trillion dollars, which is in the economy. There have been other supplemental issues that have taken place. And it's appropriate I drop this heavy stack, and I'll get to it in a minute. This is the listing of the allocation of just the counties. It's 69 pages, single spaced, both sides. I'll get to that in a minute. Okay, the other supplemental issues or things that have taken place. Interest rates were cut by the Federal Reserve by 150 basis points early in the pandemic. The IRS federal income tax deadlines were extended twice. They suspended student loan payments and interest accruals twice. The authorization delay required tariff payments. The expansion of unemployment benefits, HUD temporary assistance programs, eviction moratoriums, direct lending programs, liquidity programs for corporations, municipalities, money markets, mutual funds, commercial paper. So bringing it back, our focus tonight about the 1.9 trillion. Again, I'm giving you lots of numbers, but I think it's important. If we return the money, how effective will it be? Now again, we're just talking about the 350 billion inside of the 1.9. The state of California received 27 billion. That's just the state. Are they going to return the money? No. State of New York, 12.7 billion. State of Texas, 15.8. State of Florida, 8.8 billion. These are all with B's. U.S. territories, 4.5 billion. Are they going to return the money? Tribal governments.
Would it be conservative they return the money?
20.
Or not?
Can I finish?
No.
Would you like me to leave? Tribal governments, 20 billion. Counties in Idaho, I'm just going to give you 3. Ada County, 93.5 million. Canyon County, 44.6 million. Bonneville, 23.6 million. So here is just a listing of the actual counties. I'm going to pass this around. You get an idea of just the county's allocation of ARPA. Spokane County, over our friends in Washington State, 101 million. Snohomish County, 150 million. King County, 438 million. Cities, we have city council members here. There's 28 pages of cities. Boise at 37 million. Chicago at 1.9 billion, that's with a B. Oak Park, which is one of 100 smaller communities outside of Chicago, 39 million. San Francisco, 454 million. Denver, 167 million. Portland, 208 million. LA, 1.3 billion. Billings, Great Falls, Missoula, 16, 19, and 14 million respectively. So strings attached. Now I can go into what I believe the strings are as it's been explained to me, but there's obviously some in our community and on this board that can probably better articulate what their concerns are than I can. What I've heard is that and this is a quote, and this I think was in both the interim and it might have been also in the final rule. Funding recipients are required to follow all applicable federal rules, regulations, and executive orders. The key word is applicable, right? They mentioned 2 executive orders in the actual final rule and in the interim rule, 2 of them. And they say they advise you to follow them, and they have to do with seatbelts and texting while driving. Those are the applicable federal, or I should say, executive orders. Now, I've heard our sheriff say that if there are executive orders that are contrary to what he believes is correct, he will not enforce them. So the concern that there might be an executive order sometime in the future, I think is unwarranted. It's actually been addressed in a number of legal opinions that I have ordered myself or have reviewed. For example, the Legislative Services Office, which is the office that supports our legislature, has a 6-page memorandum that walks through all of these issues that have been raised. So, in a nutshell, if we send the money back, at least the county's portion is going to be going towards things that if we don't spend the federal money, which is our money, if we don't spend that money, we will levy property taxes to pay for that. So us as a community are already on the hook for this 1.9 trillion of ARPA and everything else they've done, which is approaching a national debt of $30 trillion. We all collectively have signed up for that, whether we wanted it done or not. And now if we send the money back, the property taxpayers, which I am one, will now have to come up with $32 million, probably more than that, to pay for the things that we need done within this community. So I, as a property taxpayer, do not want to pay for it twice. Now, that's my belief. I'm giving you the background. Hopefully you have enough information to kind of articulate some questions. And I'm going to defer to the chairman. Do you want me to stand for questions, or do you want to open up for debate, and I'll be happy to answer.
We've got a resolution copy here regarding this matter, so later in our meeting we will be debating the merits of doing this or not doing this. If anybody here has any questions about the specifics of it for Treasurer Matheson, bring them up now. Any questions that he would answer specifically about it, but let's not discuss whether or not this is a good or bad thing to do. There'll be time later in the meeting to do that.
Do I understand you to say that you're in favor of accepting the money? I think that's what I heard you say.
Yes.
Thank you.
So, and did I understand that we in fact have decided to accept the money?
We have decided, the Board of County Commissioners, which is the authoritative body, they're the only ones that can make the decision. They did accept and make the application for the money. Now, they can return it.
Okay.
Because we have not spent any of the money except for some administration costs.
So this is the same Board of County Commissioners that in November approved a $108 million budget and a full 3% tax increase. Is that correct?
Leslie, was it 3%?
Pardon me,
That is
pardon,
not
pardon.
what was levied, that was what was approved approved, but we only levied 1.4%.
Oh, yeah, there was a mistake made regarding the calculation of the levy, so yes, it was approved, but because of the administrative mistake that was made internally, that's not actually how much they levied, it was about half that.
But they did approve a 3%.
Yes.
And so this is about 1/3 of what the entire budget of the county is, and we're gonna spend it one time.
Yes, but we have until the end of December of 2026 to expend the funds.
Okay, thank you.
So
Mr. Thompson.
the actual, well, okay, I'll answer the question,
Yep.
some other questions.
Mr. Thompson.
All right, so what happens if we take this money? What's the ramifications if you tell the federal government that whatever your rules are, they're not applicable, piss off?
There are parameters within the actual act itself that we must comply with. You can only spend the money on things that directly relate to COVID-19 or the economic impacts of COVID-19. Water and sewer, premium pay, which was requested but is not really being considered. And the fourth broad category was replacement revenue that you may have lost as a result of the economic ramifications of COVID-19. Now, as long as you're in that box and follow those parameters, anything outside of that would be inapplicable based on what my understanding of the rule says and what our attorneys have told us. So if there's a mandate by President Biden that y'all have to be vaccinated, that is outside the scope of the, and we could go tell them to pan sand. And I think there's many in our community, including me, would love to be able to do that. Yes?
Can they try to recoup funds at any point, or is there a time when, if
No,
they're going to try to recoup them, that
I know of no deadline where they could come back and recoup it. Now, in issuances like this, there is going to be attestations taking place, audits to make sure that you complied. Now, in reality, are they going to focus on 32 million out of 1.9 trillion in an actual audit? Unlikely, but they have in perpetuity to come back and look at what we did, how we did it. Worst case scenario, if we screwed things up and we didn't comply with the actual act itself, we have to give the money back.
I mean, could that potentially happen sooner than later is my question. Like, could that happen later this year?
Well, there's a situation in Arizona where they made some, I think, calculated and deliberate strategies which were obviously mistakes. So there's an issue going on in Arizona. What they wanted to do in Arizona is they wanted to use ARPA funds to actually have a non-mask mandate within the school districts. So they're using ARPA funds counter to what the intent of the act was. The state of Arizona could have used funds to do that same program and there would not have been any issue. But they used ARPA funds and said, we're gonna use ARPA funds to stick it back in your face, which I think was ill-advised.
And they're trying to get that money back now?
They have sent a letter that they think you spent money in defiance of the actual intent of the law. So yes, we're going to consider recoupment of those funds. Yes, sir.
Are you able to, if we were to accept these funds, are you able to isolate those in the budget such that it doesn't end up just ratcheting up the baseline so that it's even?
Well, it can't ratchet up the baseline. The budgetary law within the state of Idaho is controlled very carefully about how much you can increase the budget year to year to year. So it will have zero impact, no impact at all on the taxing authority of the county.
Mr. Nunn.
Or the budget authority, for that matter.
I was just, read an article about how the education budget was passed and they were saying we're gonna use this money to increase teachers' salaries. There's a one-time tranche of money, and yet salaries, last time I checked, were paid with some regularity and into the future. What's to happen, what's to prevent that from happening here so that we're spending funds only on capital expenses that we would normally do anyhow, and not, setting up programs which then have costs that run into perpetuity?
And that's the transparency that we've been focusing on. The projects that we want to spend the money on that have been submitted and evaluated will be disclosed and on the website. So if you see something that is a perpetual expenditure, which does not make sense, then you can bring it to our attention. I hope not to make such a stupid decision to use one-time money to pay for ongoing expenditures, but knowing government, it's been known to happen before in the past.
One more question. Yes?
You mentioned the pandemic earlier. What strings, if any, could be or are attached to this money concerning anything the CDC or anything the government can come down with, more mandates concerning this? Because I understand there are some strings there. Would you like to share that with us?
Well, that's one area where I will candidly admit to some validity of concern.
And I'm so glad I asked.
Now, I don't think it rises to the level to put at risk $32 million, but I heard a woman who's here tonight argue that the actual intent of the law is to be following the guidance issued by the CDC as it relates to mask mandates and things like that. Now, it's not you don't have to, but it's embedded in the actual narrative. I don't think that rises to a level of concern, at least for me, that it would stop us from accepting the funds because of the comments made by our sheriff and other law enforcement people within the state of Idaho that if there is a mandate outside of the actual scope of the act itself, it will not be enforced in Idaho.
Now, is your background legal? So this is
No,
an
it is-
expert opinion that you're giving?
No, I have, like I said at the beginning, I'm relying on the opinions of the legal counsel from the Idaho Legislative Services Office, our own internal Kootenai County Prosecuting Attorney's Office. The 5 northern counties have had issues, or I should say had legal opinion issued regarding the acceptance of these funds, concluded similarly.
So some of those folks are concerned about the verbiage and how this is part of the plan?
No, they have dismissed that.
They
as a
have
concern,
dismissed it.
yes. And I believe, and Mr. Kootenai is here, I believe the city of Kootenai has come to, from a legal standpoint, a similar conclusion that those concerns that have been raised by the community are not substantive. Are not substantive from a legal standpoint. And I don't want to pretend to be an attorney, not to do it, but I'm relying on attorneys that have issued these opinions, including the Iowa State Attorney General's office, because he's the one that drafted the acting memorandum for the Idaho Legislative Services Office.
Thank you very much.
You bet.
And if you could stick around if possible,